Hi everyone, welcome. Hope you're having a good evening. We're going to get started. So come on and grab something to eat and then grab a seat. Thank you. So I'm going to welcome Patrick Fitzgerald. Will you bring the trip down today? He's Austin Howard. He's going to tell you a little bit about the equity tax credit.
No, you're good. Oh my gosh.
Barely any chairs left.
There's something there. Someone can have mine if they want.
Thank you so much for coming. My name is Patrick Fitzgerald. This practice is primarily transactions and M&A based practice. We do a fair amount of work with technology companies, including startups and established companies. The topic tonight is the new innovation equity tax credit that was announced earlier this year by the province, and it's meant to be a high-level overview of some of the provisions. The regulations are fairly complicated, but I'll try to field questions as best as I can. And we've also got Carol Vickers from Grant Thornton here, who can help answer questions, hopefully, if any tax issues arise. But I'm focusing mostly on the legislation itself and also some of the corporate issues that come out of that. So this is just a slide showing the summary of the main changes that have been implemented from the old Equity Tax Credit Act. Like, how many of you are familiar with the old Equity Tax Credit Act? Yes. And as an investor or as a company that used it? Okay. So that regime is going to cease to exist for corporations and for cooperative societies by the end of this year. In fact, if you use that program this year with a corporation, you automatically exclude yourself from being able to use this new program. So you may want to weigh the two and decide which one's better for you. So some of the big changes that have been implemented this year, the eligible investments have been opened up from just a straight common share investment, which was what it was before, to now you're permitted to do common shares, preferred shares, and convertible debentures. And the reason why that's important is because there are a number of angels in venture capital types who are preferring to invest in convertible preferred shares and or convertible debentures instead of common shares. The old rate was 35%. There are two new rates depending on the type of business that applies to credit, and I'll talk about those in a little bit. The qualifications to become an eligible corporation are tighter than they were before in terms of the level of assets that the company can have, age of the company, a couple other things. No go-ups. So I know that the press release for this is off about how you use this with a go-up. That was done pretty easily. As with everything in law, the devil is in the details. So if you are thinking of applying for this, the department, the person administering the program is very good at walking people through the process and the application steps. So I would encourage you to get in touch with her if you're looking at this. They've also published some pretty good guidelines on what to do and how it goes forward and eligibility criteria and whatnot. And then also on your chairs, I've got just a comparison between the new and the old. Um, The old scheme, like I said, is going to phase out by the end of the year, except for community economic development corporations. CDIFs, if any of you are involved in CDIFs, the existing equity tax credit program is going to remain in place for those. So what is it and why do we have it? So it's a non-refundable income tax credit available to individuals and corporate investors. The why, I just pulled a quote from the Department of Finance website. It's really to help take some of the friction out of companies raising money and provide a little more incentive. It's not going to take the place of it being a good investment for the person making the investment. If you're investing in something with a tax credit, you probably are not making the right choice. But I'm not an investment advisor. So the old act, regular common shares, and you had to hold them for 5 years. It was only open to real people over 19. The maximum any person could invest in any calendar year is $50,000, and the maximum credit you could receive is 35% on that $50,000. As far as company eligibility goes, 25% of wages had to be paid in the province of Nova Scotia. There had to be less than 500 employees in the aggregate, so that would include associated companies. Less than 25 million in assets aggregate, so including associated companies, and it was open to co-ops and CDIFs. So the new program, like I said, opens up the investment vehicles to common shares, preferred shares, and convertible debentures. The whole period has been reduced to 4 years. The interesting thing with the debentures is if you are going to invest using a convertible debenture, you cannot be a director of a company, and you cannot own more than 25% of the shares in the company. And then there are some other tax rules that restrict that even more. So it's not just you; it could go out to family members as well. So if you're a group or a unit that has more than a quarter, you're not going to be able to invest using debenture. Luckily, real people still get to invest, but companies can do it too as well now. So for anybody who has holding companies or had issues before trying to raise investment where people were making investments through holding companies, there's now an opportunity for that to happen. The maximum investment has been increased quite significantly, $250,000 for individuals and $500,000 for companies, and there are minimum investment requirements as well. So on the corporate side, well, it's opened up a new pipeline for funds for companies. The minimum investment may be a challenge for some companies. The maximum credit, so for a real person, it's 35% for most eligible corporations and 45% for those related to life sciences or ocean technology. And the regulations go through in pretty specific detail as to what type of company qualifies for an oceans technology or a life sciences type of company.
What about agriculture?
I don't think that's included. You may be able to get the 35%, but you have to be applying some sort of new technology to get a new product and result. For a company, the tax credit is 15%. So if a company invests in $500,000 in maximum tax credit, it's 15%. There's now a restriction on when the company was founded. The company cannot be older than 10 years. That wasn't in existence before, and I know there are a lot of companies, certainly in the Halifax area, that are much older than 10 years who are still doing regular ETC applications, and that's no longer going to be The way they're going to look at this is if you've got, they're looking at it at a business level. So if you've got a company that's got a number of business lines and you decide that you want to try to slide one out into a new company to take advantage of the credit, they're going to look back to when you actually started running that business. And if it was more than 10 years, you're going to be out of luck. So they're very attuned to people trying to concoct schemes to get around some of these new limitations. And that applies as well to the maximum amount raised. You can only raise $5 million under this program. And again, if Department of Finance feels like a bunch of companies that may not look related on the surface are actually being put together for some reason to try to raise more than $5 million for a project, then that's gonna be taken care of. So in terms of eligibility, the tax credit is designed to help innovation companies. And specifically in the regulations, there's a requirement that a company be developing or implementing new technology or applying existing technology to create something new. Head office of a company has to be in Nova Scotia. Company has to be incorporated in Canada. At least 50% of the wages have to be paid in Nova Scotia. So that can be through a combination of employees and contractors. The employee limit has to be 100 or less, and 15 million or less in assets. And again, these are on an aggregated basis, so they're going to look at all the associated companies. So a couple of things to keep in mind if you're going to use this program. The use of proceeds. So the application requires that you specify what you intend to use the money for. And you can only use the money for that purpose. If they find out that you use the money for another purpose, they can actually cancel the registration, or it may actually be automatically revoked, which results potentially in a payback of tax credits that were issued for that company. There are restrictions on what you can use the money for as well. You can't use it to pay back shareholder loans. You can't use it to pay back a loan from a related company. You can't use it to redeem shares. There are a lot of restrictions on this. Not that dissimilar from the way it used to be with the ETC. If securities are disposed of within that hold period, then there's a pro rata clawback of the tax credit. So if after 2 years the company gets sold and you're an investor, you sell your shares, 2 years worth of the credit you initially received is repayable to the government. But if the company's being sold after 2 years, it's probably a good deal. I heard a there are certain circumstances where the registration can be canceled and revoked. There are circumstances where it can happen automatically, and then there are circumstances where it can happen voluntarily. In the majority of those circumstances, if the certificate is revoked, there's a payback requirement. And again, it's on a pro rata basis. And interestingly, the company is jointly and severally liable with the investor for that amount of the government. So government can go after whoever you feel. So convertible debentures are nice, but the language doesn't seem to expand it out to other convertible instruments that receive companies and investors using these days, like a safe. I don't know if any of you have raised money using a safe. It's a convertible document, but it's not really debt. It's not really equity. It's a promise to give somebody a participation in an offering in the future, and if that doesn't happen, we may not pay your money back. It's becoming very popular in the startup scene. Not super good for investors, very great for the companies. No credit stacking. So if you're a corporation and you're taking advantage of like a digital media tax credit or some other tax credit that's applicable to certain types of companies, or if you receive employee tax rebates from SDI or anything like that, you're not going to be an eligible corporation for purposes of the IETC. I mentioned before that if you use the ETC 2019, you're automatically kicking yourself out of eligibility for the new program. Important to remember, and sometimes people get a little ahead of themselves, you have to be approved and have a registration certificate before you can issue the securities in order for them to qualify. If you issue securities before that, those investors will not be able to participate in the program for that phase. Also important to note, securities laws have to be complied with. And that's no different than before, but oftentimes people don't take those into consideration when they're out talking to people and trying to raise money. And as before, there's a long list of types of businesses and corporations that are not eligible, and some of those are professional corporations for individuals, so doctors, accountants, real estate development, and a bunch of other businesses. So that's all I have to say about the IETC, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. But I did want to make a plug for my firm's startup fee package. It's a long drive up to this city. So Cox and Palmer in Halifax is quite committed to the startup ecosystem in Nova Scotia, and we're very involved in Halifax, and I've been in many trips up there probably half a dozen times in the last year or so. So we've just released a new program where we have developed different tiers of pricing and fee packages for startups, ranging from a complete pre-incorporation startup package, which gives you the incorporation and a whole suite of documents, to a discounted fee package for a maximum term of 12 months. Or we also have a deferred fee package for a maximum term of 24 months, where there would be no bill. But there are terms and conditions. If anybody's interested, feel free to contact me or chat me. And thank you for your patience and questions.
How does this compare with the New Brunswick equity tax credit that they have had for quite some time? This is a new program for Nova Scotia, but New Brunswick's had theirs for quite some time at an equivalent level. Is it any better? Is it any worse? Or what are the upside, downside of the programs?
It's funny, because Donnie asked me the same question earlier. I said, you know what, I've only been focusing on this.
But mine's in your life, right?
But in the, and I didn't, I don't think there were any on those chairs, but I've got some information here that actually does a small comparison between New Brunswick and Newfoundland. Actually, it's pretty good, but I believe New Brunswick was a 15%.
Yes.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. Then the 35 we had.
Yeah.
Or 45.
45.
Or 45, yeah.
If you're
Corporate.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Patrick, if you choose to use the old program,
a new one based on the applicant or?
No, just go do it.
My understanding is it's going to be out.
No problem.
Corporation.
Thanks, Aaron.
Corporation can have 2 separate projects.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so. But,
Look, I'm telling you, the employees, corporations have, how do they comply with the associated?
so that actually, is very well mapped out in the. Correct. Bear with me for a second. Well, I can actually have this one out for you. So it's associated corporations.
Based on tax, yeah. So, association means that the corporation are affiliated individuals. So, forcing group of individuals. So if yourself and 3 other investors own one corporation and then the same group owns another corporation, those 2 corporations would be associated.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the number of investors?
It looks at the control side, yeah, so, if that group that we're looking at, that similar group would have to control both corporations, yeah.
So what if the zero?
So one individual that owns a bunch of
Yeah.
corporations, or owns a-
Okay, cool.
Anything else?
yeah, yeah.
Maybe.
Any other questions?
On the RRSP side, how do you get a valuation for the RRSP if you want to put it in your RRSPs as well as in your equity tax credit side?
The valuation side?
Yeah.
That's not something that we would do from a tax perspective. So, that's more like on the CDIP side, right? Is that what you're talking about? Or just
Well,
putting the investment itself? Yeah. So if you're dealing, from our perspective, from a tax perspective, if you're dealing at arm's length with someone,
Yeah.
that transaction is considered to be happening at fair market value
Right.
at that time.
But how do you set the fair market value of some of these? That's what for the federal side, try and get the federal side of the tax credit, right?
Yeah, but you're dealing with someone at arm's length with you, right?
Right.
So your negotiations are going to determine what the fair market value is from a tax perspective. Is that what you're, is that what you're asking, or?
Well, just down the road, if you have to cash it in from the federal side, it goes by the transactional
Oh,
side.
yes, by the, yeah, so
Right.
the transfer, yeah, so if you have to dispose of it, then there'd actually be like a form valuation, both that's on that corporation value of shares.
Right.
So not even the initial.
No,
transaction,
for
yeah.
valuation side, yeah.
Yeah, so it would be based on an actual form valuation of that company and the shares.
Right, yeah.
So with these changes, isn't it supposed to encourage people to invest? It sounds like there's a lot of red tape and a lot of nonsense attached to it. Like if they can come back and tell you that you have to pay back everything, what would be the sensitive in applying for that tax credit? But it sounds like they can come back and screw you at any point.
Well, no, you'd be screwing yourself because you wouldn't be complying, right? So as long as you're complying with the requirements of the program, then you're fine. If you're trying to do something different, or get around and avoid something in the program, then, I mean, that's something that you've got control of. You're the one who's instigating the action. Of course, they're going to do something, right? But I think generally speaking, it has opened a lot of opportunity that wasn't there before, in terms of the amounts that people could invest, because there were people who wanted to invest more than $50,000, right? Or wanted to invest, but they had their money tied up in investment portfolio, and they couldn't do it, and now they can. Right?
So if you invest more than the maximum, you have to apply up to the maximum, or?
Yeah. And then there's carryback.
Yeah, so it's a non-refundable tax credit that you get, so if in the year that you actually make the tax credit, the 35% tax credit that you get is in excess of your provincial taxes you pay, you can carry it back 3 or you can carry it forward. So some people make a large investment, but their
provincial taxes in that year are less than the credit they're getting, you don't lose that, you can still utilize it over carrying back.
Yeah, and my understanding with this program is because it's new, they're not actually letting you go back a year or 10
Yeah, the old
years
one,
versus your-
yeah. So the old equity tax credit, you could carry it back free.
Well, if you use the old equity tax credit last year, you can't, you're saying you can't use it as an individual.
If you
Not
did it
the
in
same
2019,
Not for the same, but,
Yeah.
but for a different,
Yes.
huh?
Same.
Yeah, for the same.
the same company, but the company would have had to have used ETC for the 2019 year. Right? So that's what makes it, if it uses ETC this year instead of IETC. But, I mean, if you ever have a question at the time, we're always happy to jump on.
Can you work that quick with the 3 months left in the year?
In this year? Well, thank you very much. If you have other questions, just don't feel like lobbing them out.
Thank you, Patrick. And point out, I think you guys are gonna hang around for a little bit, so people do have questions. So let's welcome over to the room. I just want to invite Megan Maltby up. She's our manager of programs. She works in our Halifax office. And her and Nick can down here down today. We've been doing a tour of the local ecosystem. And she's just gonna very quickly give us a really quick overview of all the programs that we have coming. One was launched yesterday. Oh, can you talk
Yeah,
about
I
it?
have this beautiful print flag on that talent. I'll actually just sit here, yeah. So Holly, you'll still speak to some of these.
Sure.
So our sprint competition just launched yesterday, as Holly mentioned. This is basically the evolution of Spark, which a lot of you might be familiar with. So it is a competition for early stage startups. You need to have a customer validated problem and solution. So very early stage, even at the ideation, you might not even have a prototype yet. It's completely sector agnostic and product agnostic. But the interesting thing about Sprint is the awards are actually smaller per win now. So you can win up to $25,000 in non-dilutive, non-repayable funding, as well as access to a business boot camp to help you get your business off the ground. Even though the award might seem smaller, you can actually use that money to undertake a short-term technical or business sprint, so 2 to 3 months of work. And those companies that show great progress on their milestones and then new milestones that they've identified to tackle next can reapply for sprints in the future. So we're actually going to be running this competition more often than the annual start. It will run 3 times every fiscal year. So that's a lot of opportunities to kind of reapply, show that you've executed, and then get more money for your business. So companies can win up to $75,000 maximum under the new version through multiple sprints. In addition to sprints, so sprints actually open right now. We just launched yesterday, as Holly mentioned. You can basically apply by submitting a written business summary by May 15th. Nick and I are always available for questions. So we're actually down from the Halifax office, but Holly and Bob can also answer any questions, I'm sure. So definitely come chat with us after this if you have questions. I'm also around tomorrow. I'm available for office hours if anyone wants to come chat about their business idea, get feedback, and learn more about the program. We also have a blue-green challenge that will be launching soon, likely next week from a notebook. So I'm not actually managing this, but I'm speaking about it on behalf of some colleagues. So this will be similar to stage competition. So very early, you can kind of come forward with your best ideas. Actually, it's similar to the Intersect challenge where we have problem statements from industry. And it's for blue-green technology companies. This would be ocean tech, ag tech, clean tech. You would basically take a look at the problem statement. There would be about 10 of them across these sectors. And then you would apply with 4-slide summary of the problem, your solution, your team, why you're the best ones to address this. We will be distributing up to 20 awards of $5,000 each for those people to then try and undertake some technical or short-term business milestones. then those finalists would come back and pitch to an evaluation committee to win an additional $10,000 for the business. Those are the two from me, and I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, so just a reminder that we have morning mixer every Monday in that case startup pros. It goes from 10 to 10:30. So we invite you all to stop by and have some snacks and coffee for that. And also our Intersect Challenge is launching next week, so you have to stay tuned to hear who our corporate partner is going to be. But we'll be sending out the details for our mailing list on that. So if you aren't signed up, I encourage you to sign up to the mailing list to find out about more people and events. So I think before we break for networking, I'll get our Halifax colleagues to draw who are our winners for our prizes tonight.
I did put my card in just to, so
Maybe I should
I just did it.
Yeah, Ron. Look down.
John. Hey, Rob, thank you. Johnny, you must be down at the bottom there. Close, Adrian.
Adrian, are like twins over here.
Yeah.
There you go,
Thank you
sir.
very much.